Hi, everyone, and welcome to a Raise the Vibe with Liz event. This is the Ascending Man. What is a 5D Man webinar? I'm your host, Liz Peterson of Raise the Vibe with Liz, and also a intuitive healer here on Vashon Island. And I'm super excited to be hosting this event with my friends and guests, Jamie Wolf, Brian Grijalva, and Jeff Lizowitz will hopefully be joining us shortly. Dave Markowitz could not make it today. He's had a family emergency, so was not able to join us. But if we could maybe hold him and his family in our thoughts and prayers, I would really appreciate that. So if we could just be with him in our prayers, and hopefully everything will be okay. So my panelists today are three guests from Raise the Vibe with Liz. First, I have Brian Grijalva, owner of Sacred Circle Healing Center. He'll be discussing embracing wholeness, recognizing and accepting the unique physical, emotional, and spiritual wounds men carry is the first step in healing and embracing your whole selves. Brian, welcome.
Thanks. Hi.
Great. Jeff Lizowitz is a life coach, author, and teacher with an extensive, successful music, TV, film, multimedia background. He'll be sharing how to be a 5D man using or accessing creativity. And Jamie Wolf, meta coach and teacher, public speaker, event facilitator, certified life mastery consultant, behaviors analyst, and founder of Tribe 525. They will be discussing the neuroscience behind personal change, shifting realities, and walking in the world towards the divine masculine in harmony with the divine feminine. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you, Liz. Good to be here.
Thanks for being here, guys. I really appreciate you joining me for this event. I'm super excited. Being a mother of 5 boys and the privilege of helping to raise a 5th for 13 years, this is a topic that means a lot to me. I was actually surprised when I intuitively got the idea to do this, but after seeing what's been going on the world stage, I think it's divine timing that this be discussed. There's so many examples of the distorted masculine as of late. And I believe it's in the limelight. It's up to be healed, because if it remained in the dark, in the shadows, it can't be transformed. So I think it's important that, we're having this discussion. It needs to be discussed more. So often the divine feminine is crushed by society, and they're told they're less than, men are told they're less than or weak, and that's not true. We have this conversation at home all the time about expressing our emotions and coming into compassion and love. And it's time to leave those old patterns behind, the outdated beliefs and paradigms in the past, and step fully into a new way of being. So I think that this program and programs like this will help everyone to have awareness and to step in a new way of being and be able to communicate with each other, to be able to connect, work together, and be united for the good of all of humanity and the planet. So a little bit about 3D and 5D for those who don't know. So I printed out this great little thing. So 3D consciousness is basically ego-based identity. It's separation consciousness, conditional love, men believing in victim state, the seeing is believing, black and white way of thinking, logical instead of heart-based, that duality, that opposing forces, they versus them, he versus she, those types of things. Manifestations are actually slow in the 3D. So that's good to know. And it's a chaos mindset, randomness, unfairness, and scarcity. And the 5D consciousness is really unity-based thinking. So soul-based identity, unity consciousness, unconditional love, co-creating, believing is seeing, intuitive thinking, working towards the highest good, highest energy, instant manifestation, really living from the heart rules, living from the heart, believing in divine order, everything happens for the highest and best good, and the abundance mindset. So that's really exciting. I like the shift to 5D. I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing, especially during this time, with everything that's going on in the world, people coming together and really uniting together. And I think we're on the right track. So let's talk about this more. So what is a 5D man? Brian, I'm going to give you the floor. So
All right.
thank you.
This is a really important topic to cover. I mean, this is the perfect time for it. You're talking about these shifts and these changes in behavior and in what is masculinity, right? What is that? What are men? Um, and I think in order for us to really grow and to really expand our consciousness into the 5D mindset, we have to address the body first. We have to address those things that are possibly holding us back. We have to become very aware of them. It's learning to be honest and embracing ourselves fully and wholly. This is the good, the bad, and the in between. All those things we've labeled good, we've labeled them bad. They're not. They're just part of who we are. But we have to label things, right? And we put ourselves in these really bizarre categories. Now, in these kinds of thinking, there are certain things that I mean, everybody has problems, right? Everyone has challenges, but there are certain things that I think culturally we push men to do differently than anyone else. And one of those things is, since the day we're born, we're pushed to excel and to grow and to change and to compete and do better and be better and make more money and all of those things. And you know, the challenges here are we learn these really weird behaviors along the way. We learn to compete and there we somehow believe there can only be one winner, right? So we have to fight and make ourselves better than that guy and however that works. And then this really bizarre things happen where we start to compete with ourselves and we start to have these internal conflicts, and it's from not embracing ourselves fully as who we are. And these challenges are there and embracing that. So it's one of those really ways that how this shows up is we don't allow men. I mean, there's a few that are acceptable, right? Things like anger and rage or indifference. Those things are acceptable, but you shouldn't have. I mean, how many times have we heard, "Don't be a baby," "Don't cry," and worse. And there's lots of things that we tell each other, and we hold each other, we bully each other into behaving in a way that's incredibly unhealthy. And so, I mean, think about this. Think about, generally, men celebrating. What do? We get violent with each other. We punch each other and just, these really kind of caveman like behavior. And it's violent based. It's really bizarre. We're celebrating and yet we're violent. Why? Because we are celebrating that thing of don't be weak, don't have the wrong emotions, be the best there is, right? We have this really bizarre drive. And so what we don't value is healing or nurturing ourselves, because then that's a sign of weakness, right? You shouldn't have been hurt in the first place. So, I mean, there's a thing in baseball, right? If you get hit by a pitch, you better not rub it. Don't rub where you got hurt. Don't do it. Don't acknowledge that it hurts. It's really crazy that we do this to each other and we do this to ourselves. We hold these thoughts and these patterns and we keep doing it. And so, what happens when men get sick or injured? Ignore it. Hope it goes away. I mean, if you just do a simple Google search, you'll see thousands of studies on men and why they don't go to the doctor. and it's because that thing of competition, it's that thing of acknowledging weakness. And that is harmful, it's dangerous. And so if we don't allow our bodies to heal, how can we possibly allow ourselves to expand our consciousness or to embrace ourselves fully? So I like to give these examples. I think that, the human body, we have three bodies. And it's kind of like this apple, right? The skin is the part you see. That's our physical body. That is, you can see if it's damaged, if it's injured. You can tell if your buddy has a broken leg, right? It's something we can see that. But then if you turn it around, I cut this apple a little bit ago, so it's a little brown, but the fruit part, the actual meat of the fruit, that's our emotional body. And then the core in the center where the seeds are, that's where the magic happens, right? That's the spiritual body. And that's where all those incredible seeds are. Now, in order for them to grow and to flourish, it needs the shell or the skin and the meat to nurture it and to protect the seed so that they can grow. And when you put those into a correct set of actions, it needs to be put into the ground with warmth and moisture and all those things, it'll grow. Trees don't grow while they're still on the tree. So there are a certain amount of actions that we need to do in order to encourage that growth and encourage that expansion. It doesn't just happen magically. It doesn't just happen by itself. Those set of conditions to allow ourselves to grow, that's the work. That's looking at ourselves and allowing ourselves to heal so that we can grow, so that we can expand our consciousness. And so, what are those right conditions? Well, if we can acknowledge the simple fact that we are three-dimensional people first, and that we have a full amount of a whole range of emotions that are valid and acceptable, we interrupt that process. So it's about embracing ourselves, and so that we can look at ourselves with honesty and heal those parts that need to be healed. So, if people who are listening to this, you are old enough to know and to comprehend what's happening. So you've probably accumulated quite a few injuries along the way. It's a good thing. Emotional, physical, whatever, spiritual traumas, those are all good. That means you've been living your life. Now let's acknowledge it with honesty, and let's heal those wounds. So what I like to do is I like to walk us through a little meditation to help bring awareness to any of those areas that are injured or that need some healing. So let's do this. Find yourself into a nice, comfortable position, relax, take a nice deep breath, try to unclench all the muscles in your body. And as we do this, I really ask people to just be honest with yourselves, truly honest. It's not a competition, so take your time. When you feel something, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, anything, acknowledge it, give it its space, feel it. Don't get stuck there, don't dwell in it, just acknowledge it. And once you acknowledge it, ask yourself, what does this need to heal? And acknowledge that, and then we'll move on. So if your left knee hurts, acknowledge it, ask yourself, what does it need? And then we can move on. So sit back, get into a comfortable position, relax, take a nice deep breath, close your eyes, take a nice deep breath in, all the way in, and all the way out. One more time, all the way in, and all the way out. Let all the tension go. Relax all the muscles in your body. Take a nice deep breath in one more time, and all the way out. Now, wherever you are, gently start to wiggle your toes. Just wiggle your toes. I want you to bring your awareness to the tips of your toes. What do they feel like? they warm, they cold. I want you to feel the skin around your toes. Really become aware of just your toes. And now slowly bring that awareness into the soles of your feet and into your ankles. How are you feeling? Is there any pain, any discomfort? Is there any emotions attached to your feet? Take a nice deep breath here and out. And let's bring the awareness up our shins and calves, all the way to your knees. Now let's come off your thighs, into your hips. Take a nice deep breath. How do your legs feel? Yeah. Bring that awareness into your pelvis. What are you feeling in the pelvis? Are you relaxed? Are you tense? Are there any emotions here? When you're ready to move on, let's come up the abdomen, the lower back, all the way up your sides to your chest. Take a nice deep breath and feel the air come in and out. Feel your heart beating. What do you feel? What do you need? Now let's bring that awareness to your shoulders, and down your arms, into your elbows. Come down into our forearms and to our wrists and your hands and your fingers, the very tips of your fingers. What do you feel? Is there any pain, any discomfort? Come up the arms, back up to the neck, and just take a minute. Breathe in, feel your neck. Feel all the muscles relaxing. What's going on there? When you're ready to move on, let's come up to the back of your head, into your jaw, into your lips, and your teeth, and your nose, and feet, and your ears, and your forehead, all the way to the very top of your head. Take a nice deep breath here. And out. What do you feel in your whole body? Did any memories come up? Any emotions? Any pain? Any joy? What did you feel? Whenever you're ready, go ahead and come on back. And if you need to, you can write these things down, whatever you need to work on it, and we can answer any questions if they come up in a bit. But I'm going to keep talking, so if you're taking notes, by all means, go for it. So now that you're aware of what you're feeling, right, and also you're asking yourself, what do you need to heal? Now listen to yourself. There are so many things in our bodies that we know that we need. We just don't allow ourselves to do it for whatever reason. Something as simple as if you're feeling stagnation, well, get out and run, go, move, do something, get some movement in your body. That's your things that come up. If your knee's hurting or you're having some medical issue, seek out the experts that can help you. there's, here at my center, I've got so many men that come in, and they don't come in of their own free will, right? It's someone else has dragged them in. And I usually start off my sessions with the same question: how can I help you? And do you know how often I get, I don't know. I don't know why I'm here. My wife brought me, or, I was told to come. And I look over and I can see a twisted up leg, or, you can obviously see the guilt they've been carrying their whole lives, and they're twisted up their body, protecting their heart. But they will claim, I don't know, because they're not being honest with themselves. It's about honesty. And there goes, on this, there's another little part about this. I think sometimes men go in to see an expert because they've been forced to, right? But even then won't be honest with what they need. And it's because they're in competition still with either the practitioner or themselves, and they don't understand that as a professional, we're here to help. And we're here to help the client be the best version of themselves possible. There is no competition, there is no judgment. That doesn't even factor in. But sometimes, there's this huge resistance to that because they feel like they don't want to display weakness. And it's bizarre, and it makes things so much harder. And we have to jump through a lot more hoops just to get to the meat of the issue. So another thing that's happening right now, because we're in a pandemic, right? And usually men like to define ourselves based upon the things that we like, our interests, right? We all know, John, the Seahawks fan, or, Brad, the fisherman, right? That's kind of how we identify ourselves, by our interests. But a lot of that has been taken away, or, interrupted because of this pandemic. So what I'm seeing a lot is, I'm seeing a lot of men that are having sacral issues with, or sacral chakra issues. And that's because the sacral chakra, its main functions are sexuality and identity. And so we're having an identity crisis. And how does that manifest physically in the body? It will show up as lower back pain. It will show up as pelvic discomfort. It'll also show up as complete dead sexual energy. Or on the other end, the sexual drive of a teenager. It's completely out of control. And so what do? We can look at it from so many aspects, but I like to do things practically, things very easily. So what I tell people about this is, we learn more about ourselves by doing the things that we don't like, as opposed to doing the things that we do like. Doing the things we like bring us joy, but we don't learn very much. If I asked everyone here to tell me a food that they will not eat because they find it repulsive, we can all come up with an answer pretty quickly, because you've defined yourself. I am the guy that doesn't like this. And that's 100% a fact. So what I challenge everyone to do right now during this time is to get out of your comfort zone. Do those things that are challenging. I want you to get uncomfortable, because by being uncomfortable, you start to learn more about yourself. You can focus that lens of your identity. And it don't have to be big things. You don't have to jump out of an airplane or anything crazy like that. This is simply, do you drink your coffee black or with cream? Well, drink tomorrow. Challenge yourself. Every little thing, every single day, you're actually going to grow as a person. And how does that help? Well, it helps identify, your soul starts to understand its own identity better. And guess what happens? That lower back pain starts to get better, and your sexual drive starts to stabilize, because now you're finding out who you are on a much bigger scale than just doing the things that you enjoy. And so that's one of the big things that I think we need to do, is challenge our own identities. And that will really help us understand. Now, the last part that I think we really need to go in order to really grow into that, empathetic person is we need to work on our empathy. So what I challenge everyone to do also is when you're out either with family or in public or wherever you are, I don't care where it is, and you start to feel that little monster of jealousy or competition or anger or whatever that thing comes up that's you want to work on. Look at it. Who is this directed to? Why is it there? And can you do something positively to impact it? Are you competing with someone or can you help them win? If you can help them win because it's not a competition, you're going to help them grow as well as help yourself grow. And usually it's not the easiest choice. The easiest choice is indifference, right? Just to not my problem. But if we actually try and engage ourselves to help our brothers win for no other reason than just to help, we are learning and expanding empathy through action. And on the same token, we are holding ourselves accountable as well as our brothers. So let's stop giving each other shit about it, huh? And help each other out. That's the real meat and the truth of it. Be honest with ourselves, be honest with each other, hold each other accountable, and let's help each other win. And that's embracing your wholeness. Does that make sense? All right. Is there any questions about that? Any? Oh, can't hear you, Liz.
We have a couple things in the chat. So men are having an identity crisis. We learn more about ourselves by doing the things we do not like, getting out of our comfort zone, and then doing something different every day in order to heal and find out who you are on a much bigger scale.
These were all
And
just
then I
quotes.
think
These were just quotes of what you were saying that really resonated. So I just wanted to document those because it was such good meat.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's kind of the
great, and I
challenges.
agree.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the challenges. And I
Mhm.
think I agree with what Jamie also put in the chat. The easiest choice is indifference instead of empathy through action.
Yeah. I mean, it's so many times we see things and we just don't want to be involved. We don't want to be bothered. And it's not my problem, right? No, it is your problem. It's all of our problem. And we have to all hold each other accountable and let's all step up our game and let's help each other out. Let's help each other win. I mean, we don't need to be number one. That's a falsehood we should let go of. With the same thing about letting go of containing your emotions. I mean, if you're angry, be angry. If you're happy, be happy. There's trying to control that is, I mean, how many men do we see who are just locked up and stiff and can't move? It almost always is an exact correlation with their mental state. They don't want to be flexible. I have a client, bless his soul. I've been working with him for about 10 years, and he will not embrace this concept. And he is like a piece of wood. And I can't get him to loosen up. And that's because it has nothing to do with his physical body. It's his emotional body that is in turmoil, which he doesn't want to, that's too far for him. He doesn't want to do that, right? But that's kind of the thing. It's about acknowledging what we need and leaning into it and allowing ourselves to heal. I think that's the biggest thing, is allowing that. It's not weakness. Allow yourself to heal so that you can come back better, stronger, faster, whatever you want to call it. That's that. Allow yourself to heal so that you can grow and you can.
That's a great example too about that shows how wounds get stuck in the
Mhm.
body and end up crippling us.
Yes.
Mhm. Jamie, Jeff, do you have anything to contribute to Brian or any questions?
All true. You got it.
And really nice meditation as well. Thank you for that moment to get centered.
Good. Thank you for help for participating with this. This is I love it. This is obviously this is our lives. This is what we do, and we love sharing it. So it's a
Mhm.
good thing.
Yes, thanks, Brian. That was amazing. And next up, we have Jeff Lizowitz with us. Jeff, thanks for joining us today. Really happy to have you joining us today for this workshop.
Hello, happy to be here.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and give you the screen.
And I got this.
Thanks,
I
Jeff.
got the screen.
Here we go.
Okay, so hi, I'm Jeff Lizowitz. I'm in Seattle. I'm sort of like a life coach for creative types. I wrote this book over here, Not Effing Around, the No Bullshit Guide for Getting Your Creative Dreams Off the Ground. So in my little talk here today, what I'm going to talk about is how masculine and feminine energy are both needed to summon and focus creativity. I'm real big into the creativity, as you may have guessed. And how the divine masculine is all about action. And then we're going to do a guided meditation on this. So a little bit about me. Growing up, I was kind of that weird, friendless kid, just kind of wandering around by myself. I had a sense of, I've always had a sense of spirituality, but of course I didn't know it as a kid. I was kind of tripping into other worlds and had fascinations with magic and time travel, psychic experiences and shifting energy and healing and all of that stuff. And as about maybe 8 or 9 year old, I really got into the power of creativity and how creativity and spirituality kind of connect and intersect. I was, like I said, just a little kid back in Pennsylvania. I went to summer camp at a place called Camp Login Twig, and this was the late 70s. So this one summer they had an empty cabin. So one of the counselors brought up a big drum kit and a couple boxes of 70s records and a big old stereo, right? And this was when, the Stones were rocking it and Billy Joel and Tom Petty. This was all, Zeppelin. This is all what was happening. So this guy would go into this cabin after dinner and play the drums. And as a little kid, I'd sit 20 minutes away or 20 feet away and listen to this guy play. And I was always like, wow, something big's going on in there. And then one day this guy comes over and he sort of points to me, hey kid, come here. I'm like, whoa, you want to come in and check this out? And he let me into this cabin and like really rocked the drums right in my face, completely blew my heart out. And I was like, I need to rock. I know I'm only 8, but I need to rock. So throughout the course of my life so far, I've done all kinds of music, photography, writing, filmmaking, all kinds of stuff like that. And I've had fair levels of success in many of these endeavors. But one of the things that I realized as I have been doing this is that at its best, creativity is not about, fame and fortune and climbing the charts and all that, although all that stuff, I guess is great. Really what it's about, at its depth, creativity is about being seen, expressed, healed, and connected. So what am I talking about with that? To be seen. Well, out there in the world, we are often not seen. When you're walking down the city street, and there's not a pandemic or something, you're one of thousands, hundreds, whatever on that street. You are unseen. Online also, we are largely unseen. When you get a little bit closer, you've got your, sort of your acquaintances, maybe your coworkers. So maybe they see you and get you, but probably not that much, right? And then you got your close people, your kids, your parents, your good friends. Hopefully they see you, but oftentimes they really don't get the whole picture of who you are. So that's the seen part. To be expressed, in my definition, is simply to go from the potential to the actual. So in this case, or an example of this might be a dancer who knows all the moves, but on this particular Saturday night, she is sitting in the corner, not dancing while the disco ball is thumping, right? As soon as she moves in there, she is then expressed as a dancer, just like a poet is expressed when the poet actually writes. So what is the healing? When we create with a sense of authenticity, there is always some kind of healing, right? Whether it's a catharsis of the pain that we are letting go, or a healing in the joy or celebration, right? So when we are seen, expressed, and healed through our creativity, we then give the gift of our creativity to the world. And when I say the world, I'm not talking about Madison Square Garden or the top of the box office, although that's fine too. This can be just a few people or even just one. But here's where it gets really cool. When we give the gift of our creativity to others, we become the gift, because that is when we show others that they can be seen, expressed, and healed. And that takes a whole different meaning to what it is to be creative, to be an artist. Instead of like, oh, that's cool to write this song or do this poem or dance, this puts us almost like in this group, in this army, this gang of people who are helping the world connect and to understand each other, which is obviously a huge issue on the planet. So that is where being seen, expressed, and healed with your creativity can be a really positive experience. So first of all, I'd just like to ask you guys, and does any part of that resonate with you? Does that make sense in any way? Yes, no, maybe? Okay, we got a yeah from Linda. Would you like to talk about that, Linda? I'm guessing that's a no. Can Linda turn her microphone on? Okay, hands are wet, hard to type. It's a common problem. Okay, so let us move on here. So how does the masculine element play into creativity, right? That's kind of what we're supposed to be talking about here. Well, first we actually have to look at the feminine element or the feminine side. So what is that? That is, in my opinion or my perspective, a sort of networked, fluid, open, receptive channel for the energies of the universe. So to be creative, we first need to be fluid and open and receptive to all of the experiences of the world. And in ways, this happens automatically. We all experience the world in one way or another, right? But humans tend to limit their receptivity as we get older. And the more we do this, the more constricted we become. So we have to remain open to experiences and ideas to be receptive. So the best writers have always lived parts of their novels in ways, right? The best painters have been fascinated by landscapes or portraits or recreating or bending reality. The best love songs have always been written by lovers, and the best punk songs have always been screamed by the disenfranchised. So being receptive to experience and learning and having that emotional connection is part of the feminine. That's what we need. But that's really just the start, because without the masculine, this experience isn't focused into a creative act or an idea. So again, in my perspective, the masculine element is focus, and that focus is simply choice. When you focus on one thing, you're not focused on another thing. So to create something, the creator, whether it's a writer, a songwriter, whatever, must use their masculine element to make these choices. So let's look at an example that I'm familiar with, and that's songwriting. I sort of mentioned in the beginning there, I've done music. I've done a ton of music, written hundreds or thousands of songs or something. So think about this. In a 4-minute song, okay, just a 4-minute song, the choices are nearly endless. Which instrument are you going to play, right? What key are you going to do this in? What tempo? What chords are you going to use? What notes? What rhythm are you going to put to this thing? What melody? And then what's the song all about? What are the lyrics going to say? What words express these ideas the best? And then as you produce this thing in the studio, what kind of sounds are you going to use? What kind of echoes, and what's the mix going to be? What's going to be the loudest part? It's literally nearly infinite in a 4-minute song. Yet, when John Lennon delivered Imagine, the recording of Imagine, to his record company, or your new song hits Spotify, it's complete, it's done, it's a thing, it's solid. And this is the sum of all of its choices. And that is drawn from the masculine, and all of those choices are drawn from the feminine. So without both, the creativity diminishes. It becomes really limited. So how does this play out in our normal lives, not in, artworks or music or something like that? Well, when we tap into our feminine side, again, we become open to the world, its possibilities, its interconnectedness. And this is crucial, because to be open and flowing with ideas and experiences and emotions is central to that. But without the masculine impulse to choose and to focus and to take action, we can't really step forward. We can't create anything, at least not anything with real depth and truth and power. So we're built with both sides, and we need both sides. And when we are dynamic and fluid and balanced, we're aligned with the power to create and to make change and to tap into the energy of the universe. Dig on that. So let me ask another question. What about this resonates with you? Did anything in there make any sense? Or how might you shift your thinking and feeling in your action in the world after considering these ideas? Any of you guys have any thoughts on that? Okay, well, let us move on then to our next piece, which is the guided meditation. You guys always love guided meditations, I'm guessing. So let's do this thing, right? Here we go. This is going to be about 15 minutes, just to give you an idea of the length of this thing. So when you're ready, just close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths, deeper and wider. Feel yourself melting into your seat. Feel your mind open to possibility. That's good. Breathe deep. Now you're ready. Now you're ready to tap into your subconscious to find possibilities for action that are deeply authentic to who you are, what you believe, and what you want. Okay, good. Thank you. Imagine a completely empty space in every direction. The space is infinite, it goes on forever and ever. So feel the vastness and possibility there. It's empty and it's full of potential. What does it feel like to be all things and to be no things, to be everywhere and to be nowhere? Now create a 3-dimensional grid in this space, kind of like graph paper. This grid extends way beyond the edges of your sight and experience. The grid has infinite intersections where the lines cross. Good. Notice how many connections there are out there. You could never count them all or even see them all, but you know they exist. On each intersection point, there's like a dot, right? They all are sort of glowing, all these dots. They're sort of alive. Now move through this wide and expansive lattice with your awareness until you find a dot that feels like home. Maybe it calls to you, or perhaps you choose it at random. Maybe it glows a certain color or emits a certain frequency or tone. Maybe it speaks to you in some way. Now that you've chosen your dot, move into it. Center your awareness into that dot, into that node. Good. Feel yourself being grounded in that space and notice the dots near you and far from you. The infinite other dots are points of light, points of consciousness. This consciousness expands into infinity, and through all of these lines, you are connected to everything. So let's take a moment to remember to breathe deep and wide. Good. Feel yourself grounded in your dot in that space. And with each breath, you now activate your feminine element. With each breath, you connect to the nodes of light, the dots in the grid. Notice that the first breaths connect you with the nodes closest to you. Feel that energy flow from you and to you. It's a connection that flows both ways. So notice the energy, how it expands, opens up. Notice how it moves through you, each breath. This energy isn't yours. It never was and it never will be. But when it moves through you, it charges you, it animates you, it electrifies you. You cannot control it. You cannot possess it. The wider and deeper you flow, the more energy you touch upon. And when you allow that energy to flow, you allow it to express its power. This is the feminine element, the feminine mode. With each breath, feel the power of the feminine as your network expands. Notice how you feel. Notice the flow, the connections, the waves of energy. In fact, as you breathe deep, you may notice that the lines on the grid are increasing exponentially. Instead of each dot only connecting to its neighbor, there are quieter lines that emerge, lines that connect every dot to every other dot. Each node of light is connected to every other node into infinity. Breathe this in, exhale. Feel all of that energy flow through you. Good. You're connected deeply to the feminine principle within yourself as you're tapped into the network. Now it's time to shift our awareness, shift our mode into the masculine. And through the masculine, we'll take the energy, the wisdom, the truth of the whole and direct it into a specific creative idea. That idea, when energized by action, results in change. First in the metaphysical world, then in the material world. So, what question or challenge would you like to solve? How would you like to use the creative energy of the universe? Whether it's for a personal challenge on the street level, an internal change in yourself, or a creative challenge in your writing, music, or another expression. Take a moment to call this question into your consciousness. As you continue to breathe deeply and your center shifts to your masculine principle, notice how the energy of the grid is moving. Perhaps it shifts in unexpected ways. Perhaps it surges to a point. Perhaps light moves like rivers or capillaries. The masculine does not control this energy, it simply focuses it. Your masculine awareness pulls the energy from the grid as it flows to a point. The energy flows through the point and back into the grid. Along with the waves that were present in the feminine aspect, there is now focus to this energy. There's answers, the ideas that you seek, they come to you easily. This is the masculine element. These ideas are not yours. No idea has ever truly been yours. What is yours is the choice to step into action. And that action, that decision happens first in the etheric world, then in your mind, then in your body on the physical plane. Are you ready to make this choice? If so, then make it. Pull the wisdom and the networked truth from the feminine element and use your masculine side to focus it and decide it. Feel that change ripple through yourself. Feel it expand across the network. Feel its potency in the point of intention. Yeah. Now bring that energy back into your breath. Feel it permeate your mind, your heart. Know it as it shimmers through your nervous system, your bones, your blood, your cells. Whatever knowledge, information, wisdom, or insight you just received and focused, infuse it deeply within yourself. It's always fluid and it can always be directed in other ways. By flowing and focusing, you integrate both the masculine and feminine to find and take creative action that will benefit your highest good and the highest good of the world around you. Know this, feel this, and decide this. When you're ready, take some more deep breaths and slowly move into your physical form, into your body. Feel your feet on the ground. Experience your body. Activate the senses in the material world. And when you're ready, open your eyes and begin to use your creative power and energy in this world. All right. How was that for you, Brian? Can't hear you. I think so.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you for that. It was a really, really a powerful exercise to really focus that creative energy. That was very beautiful. Thank you. Yeah,
Sure.
I have a lot to process from that one.
Very good. Were there any specific moments of insight or anything like that that you'd like to share?
You know, nothing that I can articulate at this moment.
Mhm.
There's a lot of emotion involved with that, and so I need a minute to process exactly what that was.
Fair enough. Sounds good. I'm glad you got some goodness from that. How about you, Liz? Any insight from that or?
That was amazing. Thank you so much for leading that. And I like the way you brought the divine grid into the meditation and took us to a specific point. And I also loved how you use pull in the creativity, that divine feminine piece, and then focus with it with the divine masculine piece. That was beautiful. I really enjoyed that. And I hope our listeners do too.
Cool. Good deal. Well, that's what I got. You know, as far as pitching some stuff, I do complimentary coaching sessions with people. Liz, do you have that? Do you have that link, or should I put
I
that
do.
on?
I'll put that in the chat, and I'll also post that when I send out the recording as well.
Okay, I'll just pop that in here right about now. Cool. Well, thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure to have you, Jeff. And thank you so much again. Really loved your talk and your words: receptive, dynamic, fluid, balanced, potential, creativity, and focus. Thank you for your contribution today, Jeff.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to split. I've got some other stuff going on here. But have fun and
Take care. Thanks for
Yep.
joining us.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye, Jeff. And next up, we have Jamie Wolf. Jamie, take it away. Oh, wait a second.
Right. Thank you for this opportunity, Liz. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you, Jamie.
And I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jamie. Up there you are. Okay, I've got you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be today really focusing on a little bit of a different perspective and kind of in alignment with a lot of things that Brian had to say around the different parts of our being. And I really appreciated his talk. And it really is in alignment with what we agreed that I would talk about today, which is, the neuroscience behind change and how we actually affect change in our lives and bring to fruition the lives that we would love to be living. My goal in working with people, I have a small private practice and then also work with about 10,000 people a year in seminars in the United States, mostly in California, but working with various folks. I really get kind of a big snapshot picture. And one of my main audiences that I work with are folks who work in the education system, social workers, people who work with children in all kinds of ways, and then also a lot of law enforcement. So when we're talking about masculinity and toxic masculinity, the divine masculine, I get to see all of that across a spectrum and a continuum all the time. So listening and looking at that piece, my perspective is a little bit different than Jeff's. I really see us being whole human beings when we integrate fully both the divine and the feminine aspects. And so rather than breaking those pieces up into separate things and identifying those pieces as different or even defining them for other individuals, I think it's such a personal way that we define those pieces of ourselves. And as a member of the queer community, I know that for us, masculinity and femininity, we really like to, in my experience, I'll speak for myself. terms of a continuum together because people are complex. So just even, Brian's little apple example, I love that. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I am so going to use that in my work. It was a great one. And then I can eat it later for a healthy snack. So good job. I love the idea of the intersection of the apple is a perfect idea. It's a perfect way to think about it, right? So we've got our outside, our protective place, and then, what's underneath. And I also loved, you talking about emotions and how, for when we talk about cisgendered men or not cisgendered men, just men in general, when we talk about emotions and accessibility to emotions, emotional intelligence is the new cash. It's the new money. It's the new success. And when, men are expected to be successful, when men are born, cisgender men are born, they're allowed to have feelings and emotions and express themselves and ask for tenderness. And social scientists tell us that about age 8, we start to tell them that they have to change that and shut that down. And I think this is really, and Liz, would you be willing to just watch my time for me and maybe give me a 5 or something? I appreciate that. So, it's so beautiful that, when you speak about really accessing our emotions, but I think first of all, in our society, we have to be willing to, as parents, allow our boy children, our cisgender boy children, to express emotions and then to celebrate those things with them. So I want to give a shout out to Carla McLaren, who's an author. She authored this book that for me has been a game changer. I'm a student of nonviolent communication, the work of Marshall Rosenberg. So I study emotions and what they mean. They're not just words. If you ask someone what today in our society the word freedom means, you're going to get myriad answers all across the continuum. So really thinking about those. What Carla has done in this book is so beautiful. You can actually look up an emotion like anger, and it'll tell you what it is an umbrella for, what it will uncover. What if we really look at that piece? And I think it was you who said, Brian, that men are only allowed to express certain kinds of feelings, and those feelings are what is acceptable. So it's interesting because I walk in both worlds in some ways when I'm really in that toxic male environment, and I can see the men's fear around being vulnerable at all, and that locked upness that you talked about. So why is that? For me, my learning and, what you talked about, the seeds in the apple, I want to come back around to that, because in my learning, it has been incredibly helpful for me to understand the origins of those things. And I want to look at it from a scientific base. And when we look at history and historical human development over time, we have some things that we know for sure about our human development. So when we back that all the way back up in time, we know that when we were, and I think this was actually a term you used, Brian, I think you used the term caveman. I think that was you. And we're talking about really here our primal brain. This is my very poor drawing of a brain. Hopefully the audience can see this as well. And our brain really has 2 parts. Now, if you're a neuroscientist out there and you're watching this video, please delay your criticisms for a moment. I'm really trying to have this be a lay presentation about really how this works. So, when we were there's a reason that, our primal brain does certain things. It really has only about 6 solutions to things. And when we talk about toxic masculinity, these are those 6 things, right? To every problem: eat it, kill it, chase it, take from it, mate with it, right? These are the things that we're looking at. And really today, many of us are suffering with the current, all the stuff that's happening on the world stage. But when we look at this and we can understand what it is, we're actually talking about millions and millions of people operating from right here, operating from that primal brain. Kill it, eat it, take the resources from it and leave it stranded. When we talk about cutting social services, that's exactly what that is. Why the 1% of the wealth is so up there. All of this is examples of what we call toxic masculinity, but we're also looking at it really is a part of the brain. And when we can understand this part that all of us have, and under certain conditions, we all have this thing. Liz is a mother, and I know for a fact that if someone started doing something harmful to her children, we might see this primal brain pop out and the gentle Liz turn into something that we haven't seen before, right? It's about protection and safety. Back to your guy, our inability to come out of that, we'd rather be in pain than get uncomfortable. And the truth is that we know that the greatest people are willing to get uncomfortable in the interest of growth, right? So what do I have to do? I have to really cut the apple open, don't I? And that feels so vulnerable to look at this piece. So when we talk about the divine masculine, right? This is an individual, a human being who is operating from the prefrontal cortex, right? This is a person, the prefrontal cortex is our rational mind. It loves to think about things in the rational way. It's in touch with our emotional core, our deep emotions. It's aligned with my body's sensitivity to feel those emotions and be present with what is in the moment, to actually be present with someone, to show up for others, to get out of my bubble, my ego-based bubble, and think about the impact of my actions on other human beings. How will this impact Mother Earth, the children of our Earth, 7 generations to come, if we use the thinking that indigenous people use, not just thinking about what is mine now to take, to own, right? To take away from, and all of these examples, when we were cave people, it was necessary, right? So when we talk about trauma and how people have adaptive behaviors, right? So as a child being raised in a traumatic environment, which many children are being raised right now, like COVID is a trauma, unemployment is a trauma. We look at all the things that are happening around social justice issues, seeing the things that we're seeing on the television constantly, our parents and our family members being affected by illness and poverty. These things are traumatizing to us. And it is a critical time that men really wake up to the fact that they are responsible in the household to teach their children emotion and energy in the house. Men need to get on the ball with this. And so how do we do that? Well, in my practice, I use some tools. One of my favorite tools is a little deck of cards that I have, and all the people I work with have these little decks of cards, and it's about developing an emotional vocabulary, right? So we think about, we're willing to go to school and learn French or Spanish or Russian or German. What is the really practical high dollar thing that I need in every single relationship? And it seems so simple, but when we ask, especially people, cisgendered men, and I'm designating about cisgendered men because men, people who identify as men or on that masculine identified spectrum, were oftentimes raised as women. So have really what I think is a beautiful intersection of both the attachment to and the knowledge of, because it was okay for us to learn those things. When cisgender men aren't allowed to. And so it's really, they're at a deficit. And I really invite people to get specific with these things, right? What are our beautiful universal human needs? And then what are my feelings in the moment, so that I can show up with my partner as a man and be able to speak to that, to listen to her or him or them, whatever, or multiple people in my relationships, so I can show up for them. And what does this require? This requires that I actually have to develop this part of my brain, my prefrontal cortex, my imaginative brain, the part of myself that often lays dormant for a long time. And people think about, I'm willing to go to the gym to build my body. But what they don't do is spend time actually developing that part of their brain that is the most critical. So then what happens? When we get under stress, things come out that we don't want to. So let's go a little bit deeper here, dive a little bit deeper about how this works and how our brains actually work. This primal part of our brain, what we sometimes call the lizard brain, or we'll call it the caveman or the cave woman in today's inclusive language, the cave they brain. We're really wanting to look at and examine what's there, because in this part of our brain lies all of our implicit biases, our belief systems, right? So we've got our beliefs about religion, about gender identities, about men and about women, and what is masculinity and what is femininity. duality. And so really what's required here for people, and emotionally intelligent people are willing to do the beautiful work of unpacking each one of these things and pulling them out and thinking about, what is it that I actually believe about impoverished people? What is it that I actually believe about governmental structures, peace, freedom, our indigenous populations? What do I care about? And what really matters to me? And then unpacking those pieces. So people say, "Oh, Jamie, that just sounds so easy. I think about these kinds of things all the time." Well, this really requires a going back in the historical piece of our mind. So my family's 8 generations from Mobile, Alabama. Let's think about that for a minute. We were and owned slaves. Can I, as a human being, as a person who walks with white privilege, for 1 second say that I don't hold racist ideology? It's ludicrous. Of course I do. In my classes, I use an example, and it's a funny example. All I have to do is sing the first line of this commercial and say, "I'll bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan." And all of the women in the entire class can sing the rest of that jingle. Liz is with me. She's nodding her head. So what is this? This is an idea about, it was a commercial. It was a commercial for a perfume that we heard so many times and we all sang, that defined our gender roles in society. They defined how we were supposed to be. And at that time, we were supposed to bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan. And the third line is, never, never, never let you forget you're a man. So be sexual beings, productive beings, be mothers, be all of it, and show up and smug it too if you wear our perfume. Right? So we can't not be affected by these messages that we learn as children coming up, and the beauty of the work of one who wants to live in the space of being in the divine masculine. And I would include it for people who identified as women, whether you're cisgendered or not, that our goal shouldn't be one or the other. Our goal should be living on the beautiful continuum of, I was going to use pink and blue. Let's not do that. Living on the beautiful continuum of all that is, right? Catching ourselves, seeing ourselves make mistakes, being willing to laugh at ourselves, but mostly to do the really challenging work of learning and getting in touch with those emotions, what you're feeling. Like Brian's, when you did the meditation and thinking about what's coming up for me right now in the pause, right? Those moments of the pause between whatever it is that's up and whatever my response is going to be, rather than reacting. You know, this part of the brain is all about reactivity. And its favorite emotion, and the one that it operates from, is fear. Fear runs this, right? And the specific place here is the amygdala, right? This little piece in the back of our brain looks like a little almond. It actually, when we're under stress, and think about the stress that we're under right now, it is tremendous for most people. This amygdala does this thing. It's actually called an amygdala hijack. It actually comes up into the brain and robs that part of our brain that is the part that is rational and says and does the right thing in a moment. And it tells you to say things that are snarky and yucky, right? Those things that we call the toxic masculine. So if in the moment we can get in touch with what our feelings are, stop ourselves, get in touch with that piece of ourselves that is our highest self. Wait in the pause, right? Viktor Frankl, wait in the pause. Decide. We're all conscious choosers. We're responsible as adults. We're not victims. What is it that I want to say or do here? How do I want to show up? And when I do it wrong, make immediate repair. How can I show up in this moment? And if I don't know, if I'm not in touch with basic human needs and what they are, right? The work of Maslow, Abraham Maslow. If you're not familiar with that, I invite you to study that. And then coming into and looking at, what are the feelings that are here right now? What do I actually need? What is in this moment? So many people needing safety, security, predictability, right? Continuity. There's none of that happening for us. Just going to the bank today to do some business and trying to manage with my mask, and it's cold and my glasses are fogged and people are pushing, thinking about these pieces. How do I want to choose to respond, to be a responsible and a conscious chooser in my life? Well, my theory about that is that Linda asked a question here, study what? Abraham Maslow, great question. So Maslow, the work of Abraham Maslow. I teach about him in my classes. He is one of my mainstays. And let me just thank you for that's a great question. So let me slow my roll a little bit. Abraham Maslow had this beautiful contribution to us, which was that we all have the exact same beautiful inherent needs, right? We have them all, right? I've got my deck here just to read a couple: affection, love, learning and growth, intimacy, understanding, compassion and empathy, clarity. And so his contribution was we all have these things. So I don't even know Brian. I don't even need to know Brian. What I know is that what we have in common, brother, is that you and I share every single need in this packet, and we need to get them met every single day. And here's when we talk about toxic masculinity versus the divine masculine, is that the toxic masculine tries to get these needs met at the expense of someone else. They take, they push down, they suppress, they oppress, they harm. Instead of seeing, and the question that Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of Nonviolent Communication, said, what if we turn the world around and said that your needs matter as much as mine? Everyone's needs matter equally. And when I think about that, then when my kid comes to the door and says, hey, Dad, I have something I want you to help me with. And instead of saying, go figure that shit out on your own, which would be toxic masculinity, I say, wow, you're interested in learning something. Let me show up. I'm going to drop everything I'm doing. How can I help you? How can I show up for you? Right? So this idea of pushing people away, isolating them, and doing those kinds of things, it's caveman behavior is really what it comes down to. It's survival of the fittest. And I say in Sid that we should be the survival of that the most inclusive should win, right? That everyone should win when we come to the table. So rather than thinking of and breaking us up into, this is the biggest side of femininity and this is the biggest side of masculinity, I really would like to do away with that and think about that for me. And I know it depends on the situation. Where am I? Who am I with? And how do I want to show up to actually mirror them? Right? In human interaction, social scientists tell us it's very clear when I mirror another human being, they feel seen, loved, and cared for. So rather than me just showing up with my big huster bluster personality and walking in and taking up all the space, thinking about who is this person here? How can I best show up for them? And this is really, and it's hard for people, really it requires that I go down here and I look at all this and I make a conscious decision about what I want to change. My partner is a brilliant professor working in Canada, and I get schooled all the time about this stuff, and I'm in the study constantly of these things. And she is constantly asking me to up my game just in terms that I use and ways that I use language. Are we open to that? Are men open to that? The divine masculine is open to the teaching of other humans, does not have to be perfect, can laugh at himself, can poke at himself and have a good time with the process of learning, and invites people in. And what we've got now in our country is such an environment of a refusal and an inability to be able to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. We don't elect people who say they're sorry. I don't know if y'all know that. There's studies about that. We won't elect them because they're seen as weak. The ability to say I'm sorry takes more bravery than anything else. It definitely does not come from this part of the brain. It definitely comes from our prefrontal cortex. And it's actually a demonstration of an advanced way of thinking when I can say, I'm sorry, tell me more, and show up for that other human being. So this is a lot. But when we're thinking about really wanting to show up in the world in the best way, I want to just kind of summarize all of this with, I really need to know my own brain, right? And when we think about emotional intelligence, there's 5 components. The first component is self-awareness. I think that for men, when we think about the toxic masculinity, it is a complete asleepness to the impact that they're having when they're walking in the room, filling up the space, doing those kinds of things, not being present for other people, and having it be so ego-based. And certainly women can be that way too, right? So thinking about that piece. But when we think about uh, uh, do I know who I am really? About a second piece of that is, do I know the impact my behavior has on others? Daniel Goleman's work says number 2 is my ability to actually censor myself, to school myself. Can I control myself? How do I show up? It is a choice. So I think the world is calling men, whether cisgendered or not, to show up in ways that are really beautiful and inclusive. So if we also include the piece of intersectionality, if you're not familiar with that, you can just Google that word, intersectionality. There are very specific people who study this all over the world. And, when we take ourselves and look at ourselves in terms of all the parts that we are, yes, I live on Vashon, I'm a beekeeper. Those are part of my identities, right? I identify definitely as masculine identified for sure. I really, though, do not identify with toxic masculinity, and that is my choice. I don't want any part of that. And I've also chosen to speak up when I see that. And I appreciate also, Brian, you asking us to show up for one another. So how do I identify in all of these different ways, and really doing that work of intersectionality and looking at who am I? So this other piece is then, again, I don't really like the idea that there is a feminine and a masculine. I think that there are definitely ways that people behave that we can look at, and thinking about, instead of that, working on a continuum. And when a man asks himself in a situation, how much of my divine masculine, how much of my divine feminine do I bring to this interaction? What's appropriate in this interaction? How do I show up here? So masculine and feminine in terms of strength and power, creativity, all of those things align with both sides of this extreme. So we want to get away from the narrative of thinking ourselves as one or the other, because the other piece of this brain science here, and Liz, I'm looking for a clue about my time. The other piece of this brain science here is that I want to really unpack all of these things and then come to the table. One of the things that is true about the divine masculine and the divine feminine is that not only are they self-aware, and not only can they self-regulate, but the key here is that they are conscious choosers. So the days of saying, that's how I learned it, or that's what I was taught, is nonsense, and it's cowardice, in my opinion. It's time that people set stuff aside that has become maladaptive in our society. And a lot of people, I'm upset about the current political environment, but I also see the gifts. The gifts in this environment are that I actually get to see firsthand the effects of toxic masculinity, the inability to say no, to hear no, the inability to allow other people in and have a voice, how much people are talked over in our governmental systems, and there is a complete absence of a willingness to listen. I heard a political person yesterday actually say, we have no need to go to the table with the opposition, calling the other party the opposition. This is toxic masculinity. So how do we stand up for what we would love? Well, I can't control all that. I can't control Washington and the world. I just can't. But what can I do? I can diligently every single day listen to things like anti-racism daily and unpack my racism, my internalized racism. I can read books about things that I don't understand and move towards the things that I don't understand. The old brain does not want to move towards what it doesn't understand or like. It pushes away from. When we think about also one of the things that with a lot of men, it's acceptable to talk about sports teams or ways that I identify in that way. But looking at how can that, I'm not saying it always does, but how can that become tribalism? How can it make us against each other and turn against each other, or that my identity is so wrapped up in that And thank you, COVID, for this gift. What other parts of myself do I need to look at and develop so that I'm not a one pony show and I can really show up in a way that I'm complex and complicated, able to fit in all kinds of environments to add to the conversation? What can men do? If there's nothing else you walk away from with this, it's start to educate yourself every day about other human beings and how they live. I can't recommend enough the Anti-Racism Daily. It covers all kinds of things. And it's a fascinating read every single day. She just did a piece 2 days ago, and it's free. She just did a piece 2 days ago about how to say I'm sorry, making an apology, right? Real men apologize. Real men show up. Real men have feelings. Real men express their feelings. And they also can walk in that beautiful balance of the divine masculine, which is, I can also be fully male. So how do we do that? Whew, it's a big work. And the people that do that work live up here, and they're fearless, and they're committed to every day doing something to increase their knowledge about the world at large so that they can actually show up for. And in my opinion, the divine masculine's job is to be in service of the divine feminine. That's what I have, Liz.
Amazing, Jamie. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. I love both of you for your contributions today. They were both amazing and beautiful and needed.
Well, I won't speak for Brian, but I love you too. And thank you for your contribution in so many ways to exposing us to different ideologies. You do exactly what I'm talking about. You really give us the opportunity to get learned about other people. And is get learned a term? You know what I mean? To show up and listen to and hear and experience the many varied and diverse voices in our community. So I'm really grateful.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, so much. It really is a huge honor to be able to contribute and help and learn. I mean, Jamie, wow. I mean, absolutely, oh my, just wow, incredible. Your insight and I'm a little bit flabbergasted. It's incredible. And the way you explain it is so powerful, and I love that from each other. And it is that is the key. That's the key right there, is learning from each other. And what you were explaining, Jamie, there about really trying to understand other people and learning things about other people really is growing our empathy, so we understand and we can do better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a beautiful lesson that we all need to learn. And it's not something you learn once. We have to keep doing it.
Right.
And when you're right, and something pops up, oh, you don't even know it's there, and working on that and improving that. And it's just such a beautiful thing that we're all here learning to do that, and reminding each other, holding each other accountable.
That was my favorite thing of your talk. And Liz, there's a question here. I don't know if you want me to answer it or
Go ahead.
we're at time. Was that a yes?
Yes.
So the question is from Linda: what part does toxic femininity play in all of this? And it's a beautiful question. Brian, I don't know if you would like to speak to that. I certainly have something to say about that.
Please, by all means, go right ahead.
So, when we think about toxic femininity, to me, it can really play out in multiple ways. So we see toxic femininity playing out from the small example of the things that we're seeing on national television about people being in your face or that kind of a thing, and not allowing space for inclusivity for other people. But it can also play out all the way to mental health and mental illness. So when I think about toxic femininity, of course, I have a great deal of compassion, just like I have for the little boys that are at 8 years old are told you can't feel anymore. Many cisgender girls are raised in a way that they have to act. And the only way, right, that they can get their needs met is if they act in a passive, sometimes passive aggressive way. And when we look at the levels of, and I'm not comparing toxic femininity to mental illness, but when we look at the levels of borderline personality disorder, for example, and we think about the ways that in that disorder, people create drama to get attention, that is likely the only way that they were able to get anyone to look at them, by creating drama or stirring things up. But it can also, in toxic femininity, we think about the outward expression of that. I would like to also have us, mention and note the ways that women turn inside. Men's toxicity is generally pointed outward towards the other. Women's toxicity is generally, I'm talking about cisgender people in general, and this is a broad generalization, is generally pointed inward. What are the clues? That we have more young girls today in themselves and starving themselves and doing all kinds of other things that are really unhealthy. We have a morbid an issue with obesity that is out of control in this country, eating our feelings, right? So boys will go out and punch each other and play hard games. Girls will go inside and eat or turn inward. And these are again, very broad generalizations. Where does this information come from for me? I ran a boys unit at a juvenile hall in a camp, and in the evenings I was in charge of also the girls unit, and seeing the very high levels of mental illness in those units. I'm not quite sure why some of these girls were incarcerated, and looking at those pieces, that's a topic for another day. But can we, since, bringing it back around to the divine masculine, the divine masculine notices when the divine feminine is in trouble. He doesn't ignore it. He goes in and offers his assistance because he is well-rounded and is well aware of emotions and is paying attention and is fully present with his beloved or his other or his daughter or whatever that is, if we're talking about that piece of the divine feminine and assigning kind of a gender with it, which we do in our society. So I think that it's really a willingness for people to quit putting us out there on the binary. It's an outdated way of thinking. And when we can fully integrate it all, then I can see when the divine feminine is in trouble, and I can show up in that way in all of my beautiful masculinity, not get small and weak, but come in and be present with her. And let's redefine strength. And what does that mean? Kindness is strength. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or if that was helpful, Linda. You can let us know in the chat if not for you.
Yeah, she said thank you. That was beautiful. Well said. Man, the coming together and honoring and
If I can add something.
yeah, and uniting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I think is the basis of that 5-dimensional consciousness, that unity, that togetherness, that good for all,
Mm-hmm.
And seeing one another. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Showing up for one another, like Brian said, and like you said, Jamie. Yeah.
Yeah, and something to add on to, what you were talking about there, Jamie, about, we teach our girls to internalize, right, and go inward, and that also comes with, what happens in the throat. It's shutting
Right.
up, not speaking up,
Mm-hmm.
staying quiet. And then on the other hand, we also teach our boys to speak up, and so we have a lot of underqualified men saying things that they're not qualified to speak about, and we have a lot of qualified women who aren't speaking up at all. And
Mm-hmm.
so how does this show up in the body? This shows up in the body as we have a lot of our women who are having lots of thyroid and endocrine system problems, and it's from a lack of being able to speak freely. And that is a major issue with a talk about, of course, that's a whole other topic, but it's the same, we're talking about the same kind of problems that show up,
Mhm.
with one and the other. And on the other hand, with men who are speaking so damn much and won't shut up and don't make room for anyone. And it's that competition problem
Mhm.
that we don't help each other and we don't listen to each other. We're too busy talking. So it's, learning to shut up and listen and try to help each other, help each other win. That's how we will really grow and thrive as people, as spiritual beings. It's helping each other, not competing, but helping.
Amen.
Wonderful. Well
Mhm.
said, Brian.
Yep.
Awesome. As we wrap this up, guys, are there any last things that you would like to share with our listeners today?
Brian?
Sure, I'll go. Yeah, something that I think Liz, you and I talked about this way back in March or April or something. But I think that this time of pandemic is I mean, absolutely terrible. There's so many people who are suffering. But if you are not in that, suffering directly, and you are on the sidelines, like so many of us are, I mean, this is the first time ever my center here has been closed for almost 9 months, and it's a little bizarre. I mean, Los Angeles is out of control, but there's something about this pause, this time of reflection. What are you going to do with it? Are you
Mhm.
going to waste it, or are you going to grow from it? I like in Bali, they have this tradition of Nyepi, which is a day of silence. And it's a day of letting the earth rest, letting the earth heal. And so that you can emerge the following day whole. And that's kind of what this is. It's a little bit longer than what any of us probably would be comfortable with, but it's embracing that discomfort, looking inward, using this time. If we were to ask people, 20 years from now, what did you learn during that pandemic? And if your answer is nothing, then you're doing something wrong.
Mhm.
It's what do you learn from that pandemic, and be able to say, this is what I learned about myself, or this is how I improve myself, my community, whatever you choose to do. But use this time wisely.
Yeah. I think, the kind of the closing piece for me is that I would like to usher a challenge to men, wherever you are on that masculine scale, and to women in terms of your own masculine ideas or that divine masculine piece, if you've incorporated that or breathed life into that within yourself. I would like to invite you all to become proficient in the language of inclusivity and creating space for people. And it is a practice. It is not something you're going to be natural at, but especially to cisgendered men that were raised with privilege. And I would just like to ask you to start to create, using your power to start to create spaces for people with less power within our systems. And I'm talking about the women who work with you, or the other men who are just quiet or introverts, for people of color, for indigenous people. And this requires a concerted effort and a commitment for LGBTQ people to have a voice in the community so that we make welcome space for everyone. The truth is that still in our society, men hold so much more power. And the piece of recognizing it's not a bad thing. Yay, that you have power. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to help or hinder? Are you going to feed your ego or create spaces where we can actually do beautiful things together? And so people will say, well, Jamie, gosh, that's so big. It's as simple as in a unit meeting and in my trainings, I say, I'm going to be quiet for a while and I'm going to ask everyone who has a shred of power in this meeting to just be quiet and let's create space. And for those of you who generally don't speak, if you would like to, let's just be silent and see what comes up for you. And what I've noticed is when we talk about creating spaces, even for people who consider themselves introverts, are we allowing input on the chat? Are we just expecting them to speak? They're not going to speak in our boardrooms if we don't create space for them. Different learning styles, people who are differently abled, all of those spaces in terms of inclusivity. So the challenge is very specifically get our acts together in terms of, number one, as Brian said, learning how to speak to when there is toxic masculinity in the room, to actually be a warrior in that moment and use our own masculinity to step in and say, Susie was talking. I've noticed that you've interrupted her 3 times. Would you be willing to listen to what she has to say? Learning the language of nonviolent communication, learning how to create spaces for those people that have a less voice than us. And this takes big courage. So thinking about that piece, in order to do that, I really have to have a commitment to studying and learning about different cultures, or I'll miss it. It'll just go right by me. I won't even recognize that it's happening right in front of me, because I'm living in my own little world and I have my own little world for sure of white privilege. So being open to the voices of other people, creating those spaces and educating myself. Let's go back to school and create a new paradigm for our country. It's exactly what you said. What have we learned during this? I've learned that I have a lot to learn. So every day I try to learn 3 new things. And I would issue that challenge out to everyone else out there. What are the 3 things you learned today about other folks so that you could show up for them, so we can create an inclusive environment that's safe for everyone? And just to wrap it up, my goal is when everybody can feel safe on the playground, everybody, then we've won.
Yes, I love that. When everyone can feel safe on the playground.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jamie. I love that. And thank you, Brian, for your final words. Beautiful. And thank you both for joining me today. I really appreciate you both. And thank you to Jeff, who also joined us. Thank you so much for all of your contributions to today, for making this a great webinar. Thank you both.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks for your presence.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Appreciate you too, both of you. Great. And thank you everyone for joining us. Again, I'm Liz Peterson with Raise the Vibe with Liz, and my guests, Jamie Wolf, Brian Grijalva, and Jeff Lizowitz was with us also today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks, everyone.